This day in sports history. It's March 26th, and with the NCAA tournament cranking back up today with the Sweet 16, how about some great moments from tournaments past to fuel you for the day? I've got great matchups, buzzer beaters, monumental comebacks, and terrific performances, and I'll get started right after this.
And that's the end of the first half. As the teams head to the locker room, the Spartans lead the Bulldogs by a score.
You guys stink. Geez, Coach, we're only down a couple of points. No, I mean you guys really smell. You need to hit the showers. And here, I got every one of you new bars of soap from the Sterling Soap Company. Each bar is artisan crafted using natural ingredients and essential oils. They also have shave soaps, colognes, beard balm, and a whole lot more. Now get in there. But Coach, we have another half to play. I don't care. I can't stand to be around you. A few minutes later. All right, bring it in tight. You guys are still playing terrible, but you're smelling great out there. Now listen, you're going to need to stock up for the rest of the season. We got a lot of tough games left. So go to sterlingsoap.com after the game. That's STIRLING soap.com. You got that? Yes, Coach. Great. sterlingsoap.com on 3. 1, 2, 3. sterlingsoap.com. Let's tip off this episode with an exciting finish on this day from 1977. This was a Final Four matchup between the 7th-ranked Marquette Warriors and the 17th-ranked UNC Charlotte 49ers. The Niners were riding a crest of confidence after knocking off top-ranked Michigan in the Elite Eight to make their first and still only Final Four appearance. But they were still the underdogs against the Warriors, who were making their second trip to the Final Four in 4 years. And maybe his team didn't need any incentive, but Marquette coach Al McGuire provided a little by announcing that he was retiring from coaching after the season ended during the tournament. Marquette looked like they were going to run away with the game early, jumping out to a 23-9 lead in the first half. But the Niners clawed their way back into it, and from that point, it was a pretty tight back-and-forth game in the second half. After the Warriors made one of 2 free throws with 13 seconds left, they had a 2-point lead. Charlotte called a timeout, and now with 10 seconds left, Coach Lee Rose drew up a play for his star, Cedric Cornbread Maxwell.
10 seconds left. Cornbread Maxwell, he'll take the shot. Cedric Maxwell, timeout with 3 seconds left.
The future Boston Celtic tied the game at 49 with 3 seconds left, setting up the final play with Marquette needing to go the length of the floor to find the winning bucket.
UNCC dropped their men back to try to pick up somewhat man-to-man, making sure that the inbounds pass is not an easy one. There's the long pass. Whitehead, go! Jerome Whitehead! Is it good? It counts! There's no signal. We'll have to get the official signal. Paul Galvin put his hand through the imaginary circle saying it counted. Now it's up to the official score. The biggest decision of this.
Maxwell actually got 2 hands on that ball, but he couldn't corral it, instead popping it up in the air for Jerome Whitehead, who made the bucket just before the buzzer sounded.
Overtime. Jerome Whitehead, the man who was starred for Marquette, rattled it home, and now it's a matter whether it fell before the buzzer. It is good. Marquette, Al McGuire.
It took about 35 seconds to figure everything out and come to the conclusion that the basket had indeed counted, and Marquette won 51-49 to advance to the national championship game against North Carolina. To 2005 we go now for a dramatic comeback in an Elite Eight game between a number 3 seeded Arizona team and a number 1 overall seed, Illinois. With 4 minutes 4 seconds remaining on the clock, Arizona had a 15-point lead, and it looked like the Wildcats would breeze to the Final Four. The Illini were able to whittle the lead down to 8 with a minute to play, and then they turned it up a notch.
Final minute. Luther Head. He hits the 3. And what a game by Luther Head. Oh, they don't call the foul, and D. Brown gets 2. Oh, my. 45 seconds left. Can they do it with time running out? There's Ingram to bat the ball away. Williams could tie it with a 3. He does! Tied at
points in 30 seconds to tie it up. Arizona had some shots to win it, but they couldn't pull it off, and the game went to overtime. Darren Williams continued his hot shooting, hitting a couple of threes in OT. However, Arizona had the ball out of a timeout with 11 seconds left and down 1, but they squandered away the time, taking a wild 20-footer as time expired, and Illinois took their talents to the Final Four instead with the 15-point come-from-behind win 90-89. So, what should Arizona have done? Well, probably something similar to what Villanova's Scottie Reynolds did on this day in 2009 against Pitt.
No timeouts left. Fields for the tie with 5.5 remaining. You got plenty of room, or time, I should say, at least 4 seconds to get it up the floor. They're in trouble. Reynolds. They got to put 3 seconds or 3/10 or 4/10.
Now, they did put a half second on the clock, but Pitt's desperation heave was well off the mark. Nova advanced to the Final Four, winning the thriller 78-76. On this day in 1983, NC State met up with Virginia for the second time in 2 weeks. After needing to beat the Cavaliers in the ACC tournament final just to make the NCAA tournament, the Cardiac Pack had survived a double OT game in the opener against Pepperdine. Thurl Bailey hit the game winner to beat UNLV, and then they cruised to a win over Utah to get to this Elite Eight game against Ralph Sampson and Virginia. Sampson, who'd missed a lot of the previous game against Boston College due to foul trouble, came out in this one and established his dominance. The Cavs had a 5-point lead at halftime, and they were up by 7 with 7 minutes 39 seconds left to go. But Sampson was getting no help from his teammates. The big man had 23 points on 8 of 10 shooting from the field. He pulled down 11 rebounds, and he had 4 blocked shots. No other Cavalier had double digits in any other statistical category. Derek Whittenburg negated a lot of the advantage that Sampson wielded around the basket, arching rainbow jumpers from everywhere on the court. If there had been a 3-point shot arc on the floor, the Pack would have won by double digits with his area code jumpers going in. But even though they only counted as 2, Whittenburg had a game-high 24, and State erased the Cavaliers' lead. Lorenzo Charles hit a pair of free throws with 23 seconds left to give the Pack a 1-point lead. So Virginia had plenty of time for a shot. The Pack swarmed around Sampson, denying him the ball, and they welcomed a jump shot from anybody else. Tim Mullen's efforts were not close, and the Pack moved on to the Final Four with the 63-62 win. Now let's rewind the clock another 10 years to 1973. Bill Walton and the UCLA Bruins, winners of the previous 6 NCAA championships, were taking on Memphis State. And this was one of the all-time great individual performances in NCAA tournament history.
UCLA. Walton spinning. Look at that quickness of Bill Walton. 8-4. This was a very aggressive man-to-man. What a pass by Bill Walton. As soon as that ball hit his hands, they double-teamed him, and he sped off. Davy Myers gunning. Walton tips it in. 35-30 UCLA. Bill Walton, 20 points.
Walton was perfect from the floor in the first half and had 20 of the Bruins' 39 at the break. Despite his work, Memphis had a dynamic duo of Larrys, Larry Keenan and Larry Finch, who combined for 30 of the Tigers' 39. But Walton kept pouring in buckets in the second half, and UCLA slowly pulled away. Bill Walton scored an NCAA championship game record 44 points in the 87-66 win over Memphis State. Walton hit an astounding 21 of 22 shots that night, and his only miss, well, he got one of his 13 rebounds and put it back in. The 44 points is still the most scored in the title game. Interesting fact, because the NCAA did not allow dunking at that point, he actually had 4 baskets disallowed. So under the rules just 3 years later after dunking became legalized, he would have been 25 of 26 from the field with 52 points. On this day in 1979, it was the national championship game and the first ever meeting on the basketball court between Larry Bird and Earvin Magic Johnson. It was a tasty preview of what was to come for the next decade in the NBA. Bird's undefeated and top-ranked Indiana State Sycamores against Magic's third-ranked Michigan State Spartans. Now, there was a lot of hype leading up to this game, and it led to a huge television audience. It is still the highest-rated college basketball game of all time, with a Nielsen rating of 24.1. Bird was named the National Player of the Year by every organization, publication, and authority who gave out such a thing, and it was well-deserved. The Sycamores were nowhere to be seen in the preseason rankings that year. Bird was the leading scorer and rebounder for Indiana State in all but 2 games, and by mid-season, had the Sycamores in the top 5. The Spartans were a little fortunate to make the tournament that year. They got off to a bit of a shaky start in the conference portion of their schedule. They were just 4-4 in Big Ten play at the end of January, and they could not rely on a Big Ten tournament for an automatic bid since it did not exist yet. But the Spartans went on a 9-game winning streak, and they won the Big Ten. Now, this game did not quite live up to the hype it generated, even though Magic and Bird did have some impressive moments.
Rebound Johnson. Magic Johnson with the ball. Oh, he scores! And he is fouled. Look at Earvin Magic Johnson. Bird. Oh, what a shooter. Magic Johnson from 15, and he loves to hit that backer.
Anytime Larry Bird touches it, there are about 3 people in this area.
Bird, left alone, he's automatic.
Michigan State had a double-digit lead for most of the game, and they won 75-64. Bird finished with 19 points and 13 rebounds, but he was 7 of 21 from the field, and he was devastated by the loss, saying many years later that the sting still had not worn off. Quoting him, he says, "I knew going into that game that I was going to have to play the best game I'd ever played in my life, and I didn't do it. I let us all down." Magic had a game-high 24 points, but even though the game was a bit underwhelming, the influence of this game, and obviously these 2 guys, was tremendous. The game grew in popularity year after year from that point to become the March Madness we now enjoy. On this day in 1945, it was the NIT championship game between Depaul and Bowling Green. Depaul had the original big man, the bespectacled George Mikan, who dominated in this game, scoring 34 points in a 71-54 win. And really, Depaul did not have an equal in this 8-team field, winning by an average of 28 points in their 3-game march to the NIT title. Now, at this point, the NIT and the NCAA tournaments were sort of on equal footing. Both tournaments invited 8 teams to play in their postseason events. The NIT hosted all its games at New York's Madison Square Garden. The NCAA tournament split between New York City and Kansas City, with the title game being held at MSG. Oklahoma A&M, which would become Oklahoma State, won the NCAA tournament, led by their big man, Bob Kurland. Mikan's DePaul team and Kurland's A&M team played another game at Madison Square Garden to determine an undisputed national champion a few nights later, with Oklahoma A&M winning that game. It would not be until 1950 that the NCAA would mandate conference champions to play in its tournament, beginning the dilution of the NIT. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. The shortest U.S. president was the 4th president, James Madison. Madison, who was the chief architect of the Bill of Rights and widely regarded as one of the most influential founding fathers, was 5 feet 4 inches tall. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.